Hi, my name is David, and I'm making this video to try to go over some of the frequent issues that people have had with Empower and Payroll, and to try to see if hopefully this resource can help address some people's issues, especially if they're not getting responses on tickets or if they can't make it to any of the in-person sessions. So the first step that we should do is log into Empower to verify that salary schedule and steps are correct. This is done at Empower SF. And is logged in using district email address. The hard part is this information originally was not available and then was recently made available, but only after having many clicks. Folks should be familiar with this page because this is the one that they use in order to enter their hours at time and attendance. Instead, we're going to click home and then go to my employee file. At this point, you're going to click on employee information and then not organizational information, that's information about the school site at which one works, but instead job information. At that point, click show more. And the two things to pay attention to are the pay scale group. For the vast majority of classroom teachers, this should either be B7. B7 indicates that a person has a bachelor's degree plus 30 units. 30 units is typically standard for having a teaching credential, or in the case of I and other people who are instead category B8, that means a person has a bachelor's degree plus 60 units additionally. So the next thing to check is the pay scale level. I'm on step 17 because this is my 17th year in the district. If either of those numbers is incorrect, either because it was wrong to start with or because the information didn't port over properly with a switch to Empower, that is the first and easiest thing to figure out as being an issue for submitting a ticket. After verifying that that information is correct, the next step is to verify the amount. I've included two links here, one that gives a salary schedule specifically for teachers. And as you can see, once the page loads, you can see that you have B6, which generally speaking, no one should be paid for because teaching credentials should put people on the B7 schedule for plus 30, or else B8 for having bachelor's plus 60 units. There's a whole bunch of really confusing and complicated numbers. We'll come back to those in a moment, but note that there's information down here at the bottom about retention bonuses that are given in the 5th and 9th years, money for master teacher, high potential schools, hard to fill subject areas, and national board certification. Let's say, for example, that someone is B7 and they are in their 3rd year. You can see that this amount over here, $59,960, is the amount that should be part of their standard pay. Then there are two add-ons, one for QTEA and one for LWE. Those ones we'll see later when we go over the line items on the pay stub. And if you take $59,960, add $46,15, add $4,036, the number is $68,611 for total salary for the year. We'll keep those numbers in mind, but for the next step, which is looking at DNP calculator, we're only going to use the left number for reasons that make sense to the district, and for us, we just have to follow the directions. Note that if you are not a classroom teacher, for example, a department chair or some other category, there's an entire folder that has different salary schedules for different certificated staff. You can click on and verify exactly where you're supposed to be. For our purposes, however, we're going to go to this DNP calculator. The link asks you to automatically make a copy, which we'll make a copy. And we're going to use this hypothetical example of a person who is B7 in their 3rd year. So we'll take this amount of $59,960 and enter the salary here at $59,960. And FTE will be entered as 1. If you look at the different pay stubs from 2021, the amount for the employee gross for each month should be $499,667, and then for 2022 should be $58,2944 with a monthly DNP of $242.88. You'll notice that the monthly pay is higher in 2022. That is because a smaller amount is coming out in order to go towards the July paycheck, which is the reason why the July paycheck is going to be smaller than the rest of them in violation of contract, which calls for 12 equal payments. That's specifically because the non-July payments are going to be larger, theoretically offsetting it, but certainly not without adequate knowledge. So in this case, in this theoretical example of a person who's B7 in their third year, they should be able to pull up their pay stub and verify that their monthly gross and then their DNP match up with those amounts, which hopefully will be the case. The next step then would be to go through the person's pay stub line by line. And to verify and make sure that we know how to find the pay stub, we're going to again go to Empower. And go to the same place that we went earlier, or at least close to it, home, and then my employee info. And from there, instead of going to employment information, instead go to pay information. Specifically, there's an investigation here for pay statement. Note that it's at this point that if you wanted to verify the W-4 information was correct, you would click over here in order to verify it. Some number of people were severely harmed this year because during 2021, the school district was deducting the incorrect amount from their paycheck, contributing towards taxes. And this is at least one of the factors that led them to have a much higher tax bill. So if you believe that might be the case, you should click over here and verify to make sure that the district has the proper records of the number of dependents, et cetera. To look at your individual pay statement, you click over here. It'll show the most recent one. As of right now on May 17th, that would be the April statement. I have already saved it and redacted information so to walk you through that process. But note that when you click here, it will show you the most recent statement. You'll be able to click arrows to move backward and forward in time. The statement here, as I mentioned, has been redacted, has lots of information that's been removed. Below this redacted information has the mailing address. Previously, the payroll area in this section under the old pay stubs used to indicate what step and scale you are on. That information has been removed, but you now know how to verify that information. Check to make sure the marital status is correct. There have been issues where people have either been stated to be unmarried when they were married or married when they were unmarried. So check to make sure that information is correct. And then when we look at the hours and earnings, this is where a large number of issues have been found. So the first thing to check is the salary, and the number that is over here should be the number that comes from the DNP calculator. This is your salary, not including the add-ons after DNP has been removed. The right column over here for year-to-date earnings is the amount that you have this month, plus all the months earlier in the calendar year. You have two different add-ons, FWEA and QTEA. These are from city propositions and parcel taxes for additional funding for us. These are separate line items that, at least in theory, the numbers should be consistent, but has not always been the case, as we'll see in just a moment. I have a national board certification stipend, which not everybody has, but is $5,000 a year. I took a sick day, and so there's a separate line item for sick pay. And then there is an adjustment. The adjustment is a new element that was added in April. It should make it easier to verify and make sure that monthly pay is correct. But the fact that it was made in at least 1 week's advance of information about it being made public led to some amount of confusion. The idea is that the adjustment amount is minus exactly what the sick pay is plus. The result is that every month, no matter how many sick days you take, your salary will remain consistent, and the adjustment line item will simply offset the salary amount. The DNP number you see over here should match what's in the DNP calculator. Again, if any of those numbers don't match up what it should be, verify with a help ticket. One thing I forgot to mention is that the salary add-ons over here should be the amount that you found on the salary schedule divided by 12. There is a line item over here for diff pre-P. In the case of April's diff pre-P, this one actually has a stated explanation. We'll come back to that shortly. But the brief version is that the March salary add-ons were done incorrectly for unexplained reasons. And so this is an additional amount of money in order to offset the incorrect amount that was paid to us too little the previous month. One of the frustrations is that the phrase diff pre-P is a generic placeholder to refer to literally any time that they need to make an adjustment, but with no distinction, no explanation, unless you happen to dig and find information where it's available, which again, we'll come back to in a second. The row down here for total, this is, at least in theory, the result of adding all the numbers over here in the earnings category. Year to date is the same. The taxes listed over here are federal withholdings tax. That's based primarily on your income and or dependents or deductions. There's a separate line item for Medicare, and there's a separate line item for California withholding tax. Note that you should have all three of these on every single payment. I know that some number of people have had some paychecks that have had no taxes taken out of one variety or another. That should be submitted to in a help ticket so that they can prevent that from resulting in a huge tax bill next year. You have two separate categories for before tax and after tax deductions. Before tax deductions are, as the name implies, taken out before taxes, meaning that this income is not subject to income tax. I'm making 403B contributions. If you have 403B contributions, make sure that you verify with the company. One frustration is that at least many 403B companies only issue quarterly statements, in which case it could potentially be 3 months before you find out that the school district has not been making the contributions as they have been. I know that some number of people, including myself, have been affected by 403B deductions that were taken from our paycheck, but never made its way actually to the company in question. CalSTRS is a mandatory deduction that goes to the California State Teacher Retirement System. And for myself, I have a Kaiser pre-tax deduction that is going towards my and my wife's health insurance. You have a variety of after-tax deductions. These first three of the Prop A additional pay due, UESF full dose, UESF mandatory COPE, these are all going towards the union. I'm also paying for Washington National Insurance Company after-tax deductions. These elements in particular are going to be different for a lot of people, but make sure that both you know what all of them are and also that they're taking out the correct amount. I know some people, for example, they have before tax deductions for their Muni Fast Pass, but the amount varied for no reason. In some cases, it was significantly more than it should have been, and that also needs to have a help ticket. This section over here on the right is the employee paid benefits. This is simply a measure and a track of how much the school district is paying for example, our retirement, for our dental, for our medical, for workers' compensation, for life insurance and the rest. These numbers, at least to my knowledge, have not been incorrect, or at least I don't know of any cases where people were harmed, as opposed to literally every other single category where I know where there have been issues. The result of these different elements up top, you have down over here under, this is the current pay periods, i.e. April's. This is the total gross amount that I earned. This is the taxable gross. In other words, the gross, not including the before tax deductions, because it is only the after tax amount that is subject to tax. The total amount of taxes, the total amount of deductions, and then the net. The net, without the redactions, is the total gross minus all the rest of it. And then as before, below that, there is year to date telling us how much, not just from April, but also from March and February and January. Under leave balances, there's illness, sick balance. This is just generic sick time, personal leave, bereavement, all in that category. And then there's a separate line item for COVID sick balance. Note that the COVID sick balance, at least to my knowledge, is only going to be for the current school year, and it's unclear whether it's been promised or if it'll come back for next school year. You know, largely dependent upon what happens with COVID. The annualized status information simply tells you how many hours, daily hours, months you're contracted to do. This is all based on the formula of us having 7 hours in a day. Note that both for the illness sick balance as well as the COVID sick balance, the same is true. So for example, we started the year with COVID sick balance being at 10 days. It shows up here as 70 hours under the assumption that we're spending 7 hours per day. That hopefully makes sense, the different elements of the pay stub and the areas that I at least know for sure some people have been harmed by. One area, if you're at the point where you verify that the information is available, is to go to the known issues page, which was emailed out. At least the first time I saw about it was just about on May 4th. This is a relatively new section of the school district website that gives updates and tells us about specific information that either that they have fixed or that they haven't fixed. And so if we go here to known issues, they give updates every Wednesday. So the most recent one was last Wednesday on May 11th, and it gives some information about no activity for 403B, 457B reporting, and W4 online self-service form. I specifically mentioned that there were a couple of issues that were indicated on the May 4th one. That's specifically the adjustment line. This explanation here talks about how the adjustment offsets the sick leave, personal necessity leave, permission days, et cetera. And then this also explains why there was a diff pre-P in April, but that information is not clearly indicated on the pay stub, which would be great. And I've expressed my interest in that, but the information is available here, and presumably tomorrow on the 18th, they're going to post another update that may have information. Hopefully the information is posted before the end of the pay period, or at least before we have them issued. You'll note that the April payment, which was made on April 29th, on April 29th, they did not mention anything about those. Instead, that information showed up here in the May 11th one. So there was, a week and a half, 2 weeks of uncertainty and a lack of information. The last element to note is that for submitting help tickets, I've had a lot of success going to the website eis.sfusd.edu. That's this last link over here under number 6. It is possible you can also email them, but I've had much more success here. You'll be logging in with the exact same login you have for your email. And at this point, you can submit a request. You can also verify the request that you've already made. But I found this to be much more responsive, at least in most cases. There's one from 13 days ago that hasn't been responded to. But generally speaking, I've had much more success submitting complaints this way rather than simply emailing. You would click submit a request. You would type in something over here. So, Google remembers that I had a question about February diff pre-P. I'd ask which team you need assistance from, and you choose the appropriate one. Say, for example, payroll. You may enter what school site you're working at. You may include which specific checkboxes are relevant. I have no idea what system issue explains, but this is the other method that you can use in order to submit help requests. One curious element is that you can also find the exact same place to submit complaints, or excuse me, help tickets. You don't necessarily have to click on the link that's in the document, but you can actually click over here under news on Empower. And if you click here, it goes to the exact same website. And so this is the alternative to sending emails that I had more success with. Hopefully that was helpful. If it was, or in fact, even if it wasn't, please share this widely. I anticipate there's going to be a lot of folks who, as the year wraps up, are going to have time to dig deep and find out the ways in which they've been underpaid. And so that was my hope in creating this resource. Good luck, and have a good rest of the year.